Thank you for joining me back here on the show for this live segment around Deion Sanders. He's back in the news, back again talking to us about Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter, or I should say, and Travis Hunter. He's been quiet for a little bit since we last saw him, since we last talked about him on this show. What he thought about Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in regards to pulling an Eli, not going to certain places, not really liking the thought of them playing in cold weather cities, which I thought was great. And it's honest, I think. Really, if people want to be honest, everyone wants to be playing in the best weather cities. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody wants to play in negative degrees and is actually anticipating playing in all these cold weather cities instead of 70 degrees, 60 degrees. That I thought was great. I can definitely back him up on that. But regardless of that, he's back, and he actually pointed out some certain teams, 6 teams really, that he thinks are ideal spots for either of these players to go to. He expects them, before I give the 6 teams, he expects them both to go in the top 4, if I remember correctly from his interview on that podcast. He said one of them will go number 1 overall for sure, and then he expects the other one not to go later than number 4, which brings in some skepticism, some confusion, at least from me, when he identified these 6 teams through the New York Post and them providing these 6 teams. Those teams are all former teams that Deion Sanders played for in his career. He mentioned those 6 teams as the Commanders, the Atlanta Falcons, the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, the Baltimore Ravens, all former teams of Deion Sanders. So you can kind of see why he would like them to play there. But then the 6th team are the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's where you kind of take a second and you're like, whoa, the Eagles, they have a quarterback, they have great receivers, they have a good defensive back. What makes it all right in any way that the Eagles would be a great spot for Sanders and Travis Hunter? But on more about the Eagles, Deion Sanders said that Philadelphia would be a good fit for both of them, actually, because both of them share that same feeling. You see a bit of a admiration from afar from Deion Sanders towards Jalen Hurts. He has quoted him, referenced him before in interviews. So by doing that, you can see that there's an appreciation there. A lot of people are fans of Jalen Hurts. Obviously, how he carries himself and all of that. He says all the right things. The true model citizen of the NFL. You can understand that. But even still, from playing wise, you still just nod your head a little bit, are confused with the fit there. It's also, he just thinks the other 5 teams as well, on top of them being his former teams, he just sees them as great fits for both of these players. And recently, I know I was mentioned this before, that CBS came out with their top rankings of the top 100 college players for this coming season, and it was brought to my attention that Travis Hunter actually ranked number 1, if I remember correctly, and Shedeur Sanders ranked number 4. So already that falls in line a little bit with what Deion Sanders was talking about and saying where he expects them to be drafted. But looking at the teams that he laid out, there is some questions and really a lot of reasons why these teams are probably not going to get either of these players. And I had them listed out here to go through each one of them and see why. I just don't see any of them landing Travis Hunter or Shedeur Sanders. Starting with the Baltimore Ravens, you want to talk about Hunter and Sanders being drafted top 4. The Ravens are not going to be drafting in the top 4 anytime soon, in all honesty. Probably for a long time with what they have in Lamar and Derrick Henry and just John Harbaugh as a coach, their whole organization. They're never going to have their own pick be in the top 4. Of course, they can trade for it and things like that, but it's highly unlikely that they'll be in that range. Shedeur also You have Lamar there, so why would Shedeur be drafted there? Why would the Ravens think they need to bring in a quarterback there? There's that. And Travis Hunter, you could see a little bit of a fit there more than Shedeur, just because he could play defensive back, he could play receiver. So that those are two positions that the Ravens need. If Travis Hunter even ends up playing defensive back or on the defensive side of the ball. But top four for the Ravens, they already have a quarterback. It seems unlikely, realistically, for those reasons. Then the Eagles, again, another team that probably won't be picking top four. The last time they picked in that range was in 2016. I mentioned Jalen Hurts. They have a quarterback. Why would they think of bringing in Shedeur Sanders? At wide receiver, even as well for Travis Hunter. A.J. Brown there, Devontae Smith there at wide receiver. Defensive back, maybe, but then again, you don't know if Travis Hunter is going to continue to play on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL. He is a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter in terms of weight, so will teams value him that high on the defensive side of the ball? Those are all questions, and those are all reasons why the Eagles, to me, you cross them out. That doesn't really make sense. I'm not buying that. The 49ers, probably even less than both of those teams, won't be picking in the top four. They're the best team in the NFC right now as it stands. You have Brock Purdy there. Their CEO already has said that they're anticipating and looking forward to working out a long, massive contract for Brock Purdy. So bringing in Shedeur Sanders doesn't make sense. Travis Hunter, again, you can kind of squint your eyes and think, maybe he could fit in there, wide receiver there. If they lose Brandon Ayuk, why not? He could come in there and be a good player. He is a great player. But again, they're not going to be picking top four. And if they have a bad season, I still don't think they're going to be in that range where Travis Hunter will still be on the board as well as Shedeur Sanders. Moving on to the Cowboys, like most of these teams, unlikely that they pick top four. But who knows? If they go into a massive rebuild, it wouldn't surprise me picking close to the top four in the top 10 if they lose Dak, lose somebody else, aren't able to fill in the rest of their roster. They have an awful season. They're probably the most team to do that. But again, they say they want to, well, they haven't said they want to keep Dak, but you think they'd like to keep Dak, so he's already there at quarterback. But again, you don't know. This probably was the most likely team that, funny enough, could fit both of them in if Dak moves on after this year because they can't come to an agreement. Shedeur Sanders could be looking a bit more appealing to them in that spot. Same with Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. If he plays defensive back, they certainly need one of those to add depth there, or at wide receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb. The team you least likely expected all to come through, the Dallas Cowboys, probably is the best fit for both of them. And then, just to round it off here with the last two teams, the Commanders, most likely out of all these teams, could be picking in the top four if it doesn't work out at all. So that's somebody to look out for potentially if the quarterback that everybody thinks they're going to be drafting this year doesn't work out. They're picking near the top four again. Why not take a peek at Shedeur Sanders to be their quarterback? But if it does work out with the quarterback, they're already going to have their guy. So that doesn't make too much sense there right now at this moment. Travis Hunter could fit, complementary McLaurin defense as well. You can never have too many defensive backs, secondary help. So Hunter overall could fit any of these teams, but the biggest thing, like I'm going to mention with the Atlanta Falcons, could be close to top four, but having Travis Hunter ranked as the number one player right now in these rankings doesn't suggest that the Falcons are going to be the number one pick, especially after giving Kirk all of that money, huge amount of money for 4 years. It rules out quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. You're not going to throw all that money essentially to waste by drafting another quarterback if Kirk doesn't pan out. You sort of tied yourself to that, made that commitment, so they have to ride with that. And Hunter could fit again. They could be top 15 picks, top 10, in and around there. But other than that, I think Travis Hunter will probably go before then. So I just rattled off all of these teams, and it's not looking great for all of them. And on that point as well with the cold weather, I know it was more of a funny point to make, but they've mentioned all of these teams. Something's going to have to give. They're going to have to sacrifice something, either not going top four or not going to one of these teams, or giving up the whole warm weather, hot weather thing, because you're looking at Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, all places that get cold pretty early on. So that doesn't match up. That doesn't align with what Shedeur Sanders is saying. If he's willing to give up the cold weather and wait later on for the draft, later in the first round, then going to one of these teams is possible, but you can't have it all. You can't have it all, even if you're a Deion Sanders. You can't have the warm weather, one of the top contending teams in both conferences. Something's going to have to give, and that's how the NFL draft works out. Usually the worst off teams get the best players, and not to say that the other teams wouldn't be accepted, just that they're not on Deion's list because he hasn't played for them. He doesn't really know what the sensation is in these organizations. Are they contenders? Are they serious about winning? That's a big point he makes. He wants his son and his player to go into good situations where they're committed to winning. And he just might not know what other organizations are about because he hasn't had any experience there. So other teams are not ruled out. These are just the 6 teams he feels the most confident about right now. And if I were to make a pick, a prediction right now to wrap up this segment and the show, the best fit for Travis Hunter probably would be Washington, in case it's a transition year, in case it doesn't work out too well, they're picking high. I think Travis Hunter would be great for them to add. He might go number 1. I don't think they'll be that bad, but to me, that's the best fit for Travis Hunter to fit in right away. And for Shedeur Sanders, probably the best fit, ironically, could be the Commanders, which I have being the best fit for both of them ultimately. Or not the Commanders, sorry, the Cowboys, I should have said. I think that's, funny enough, the best fit for both of them because of where you stand with Dak. CD, I think, is going to stay there. Mike is going to stay there. But you need more weapons on top of that. They're not going to be picking in the top 4. I know that. But if I were to make a pick, I think the Cowboys would make the most sense because of all the holes they have on their offense, really all over their team. Bringing in a guy like Shedeur to not commit all that money to Dak. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a great quarterback. Bringing him in to give him the keys to the kingdom, matching that personality, Deion, with all the media in Dallas, all the attention that they get. I think it's a match made in heaven, in all honesty. Same with Travis Hunter, bringing that sort of star power to Dallas, that market, Jerry Jones, everybody talking about them every single day. It would be great. It would be chaos and entertaining at the same time. That's why they're my perfect fit on the Dallas Cowboys. It's a very unrealistic dream, but if I had to pick, that's who I'm going with. So I want to know what you guys think as well. Leave it in the comments where you guys think they'll be drafted. Do they have any chance of landing on these teams? And if you had to pick one of these teams, who do you think would be the best match for Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders? But in saying that, I have run out of time in this episode, so I want to give you guys all a big thank you for listening or watching to this episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure, as always, to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the both channels on YouTube. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok for more of the network's content outside of sports as well. If you do want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the Podcast Network channel on YouTube, where YouTube Shorts are posted every day on other topics around the league. All the live full shows are recorded on there if you want to go back and watch a full show, Or if you want to just watch individual segments, they're all individually recorded on there. If you want to see a certain segment or if you missed one, they're all on there on both channels. Tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more conversations and discussions around the NFL and around those topics. With me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys again for joining me, and I hope to see you guys back here again tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go